My grandmother giving away my college fund freed me. The email notification pinged at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, but I didn't see it until I stumbled to my laptop Wednesday morning with a cup of terrible dorm coffee. The subject line made my stomach drop: insufficient funds, payment declined. My spring semester tuition payment had bounced. That couldn't be right. Grandma Helen had been managing my college fund since freshman year, the same fund Grandpa had set up before he died when I was 12. "Don't you worry about money, sweetheart," she told me just last month, patting my hand with those perfectly manicured nails. "Your grandfather made sure you'd never have to stress about school costs." I called the financial aid office first, thinking maybe it was some clerical error. The woman on the phone spoke in that carefully neutral tone people use when delivering bad news to college kids. "I'm showing your account is past due for $18,500. The payment attempt on Monday was rejected by your bank for insufficient funds. You'll need to resolve this by Friday or you'll be withdrawn from classes." My hands shook as I dialed the number for the college fund account. After 20 minutes of being transferred between departments and verifying my identity 17 different ways, a bank representative finally gave me the news that changed everything. "I'm showing a balance of $347.23, she said matter-of-factly. "That's impossible. There should be around $60,000 left. Can you check again?" The sound of typing. A long pause. I'm looking at the transaction history now. There were several large withdrawals over the past 8 months. The biggest was $48,000 in December, then $8,000 in January, and $4,200 last week. All authorized by Helen Morrison, who I see is listed as the primary account holder. The coffee mug slipped from my hand and shattered on my dorm room floor, but I barely heard it. December. That was right after Thanksgiving, when my cousin Jake had shown up to family dinner looking like he'd been living in his car. Which, it turned out, he had been. I remember Grandma Helen pulling me aside that evening, tears in her eyes as she talked about how Jake reminded her so much of his father, her youngest son who died in a motorcycle accident when Jake was just 15. "Family takes care of family," she'd whispered, squeezing my shoulders. "Your grandfather would have wanted us to help Jake get back on his feet. You're strong and smart, you'll be fine no matter what. But Jake, he needs us right now." I'd assumed she meant maybe letting him stay in her guest room or helping him find a job. Not liquidating my entire future to fund whatever sob story he'd fed her. The bank representative was still talking, something about how I could request copies of the withdrawal authorizations, but I hung up. My roommate Marcus looked up from his economics textbook, eyebrows raised at the broken mug and my presumably ghostly expression. "Dude, you look like you've seen a dead body." "Worse," I managed. "I think my grandmother just killed my college career. I had 3 days to come up with $18,500 or I'd be kicked out mid-semester." My parents were already stressed about their divorce proceedings and had made it clear the college fund was my responsibility to manage. They'd trusted Grandma Helen completely when she offered to handle the financial details. How exactly was I supposed to tell them that the woman who'd raised me for half my childhood had just flushed 4 years of education down the drain? The first person I called was Jake. His phone went straight to voicemail, the generic robot voice, because he'd never bothered setting up a personal message. I tried 3 more times over the next hour before finally leaving a message that was probably too calm considering I wanted to reach through the phone and strangle him. "Hey Jake, it's your cousin. Just found out about Grandma's generous gift. Call me back. We need to talk." He never called back. Next, I tried Grandma Helen directly. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful like she was expecting good news. "Oh hello, sweetheart. How are classes going? I was just thinking about you. Grandma, we need to talk about the college fund." The pause stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. When she finally spoke, her tone had shifted into what I'd learned to recognize as her defensive mode, still sweet, but with steel underneath. "Now, honey, I know you might be upset, but you have to understand. $60,000, Grandma. You gave Jake $60,000 of my college money. It wasn't that much," she said quickly, which was basically an admission. "And it was the right thing to do. That boy was living in his car. He could have died on the streets while you're up there living in your nice dorm room." The casual way she dismissed my education made my vision blur with rage. That money was specifically for college. Grandpa set it up for me. Your grandfather would have wanted us to help family in need. Jake promised he'd pay it back once he gets established with his new business venture. Business venture. Right. Jake had been cycling through business ventures since high school, a food truck that never materialized, some multi-level marketing scheme selling energy drinks, and a plan to flip houses despite having zero construction experience and no credit. "What kind of business, Grandma?" Another pause. "Well, he's working on getting his contractor's license. He just needed some startup capital." I laughed, but it came out bitter and sharp. $58,000 for a contractor's license. Do you hear yourself right now? Don't you take that tone with me, young lady. Her voice went ice cold. I raised you better than that. Family comes first, always. You're smart enough to figure out school on your own, scholarships, loans, whatever. Jake doesn't have those options. Jake doesn't have those options because he dropped out of high school and has a criminal record. The words hung in the air between us. Jake's arrest for possession when he was 22 wasn't something we talked about in family settings, but it wasn't exactly a secret either. He made mistakes, she said finally. People deserve second chances. What about my second chance? I get kicked out of school on Friday if I can't pay tuition. Did you think about that when you emptied my account? You'll figure something out. You always do. The dismissal in her voice was crushing. Jake needed help immediately. After I hung up, I sat in the hallway outside my dorm room for an hour, trying to process the conversation. Marcus found me there when he came back from class. "Any luck with the money situation?" "My grandmother thinks I should be grateful she destroyed my future to enable my deadbeat cousin's latest scam." I looked up at him. "She actually said I'll figure something out, like this is some minor inconvenience." Marcus whistled low. "That's ice cold, man. What are you going to do?" That was the million-dollar question. Or in my case, the $18,500 question. I spent the rest of Wednesday calling every financial aid office, scholarship foundation, and emergency loan program I could find online. The responses were all variations of the same theme: we're sorry, but emergency funding for mid-semester situations like this typically takes 6 to 8 weeks to process. I had 3 days. Thursday morning, I swallowed my pride and called my parents. Mom answered, and I could hear Dad in the background arguing with someone, probably his divorce attorney. Honey, this isn't a great time, Mom said, her voice strained. Your father's being completely unreasonable about the custody arrangement for Emma and Tyler, and I've got depositions all afternoon. Mom, I need help. Grandma Helen took the college fund money and gave it to Jake. I'm about to get kicked out of school. The line went quiet except for Dad's voice getting louder in the background. Something about that manipulative witch, and I knew this would happen. Wait, what did you say about the college fund? Mom's attention snapped back to me. I explained everything: the bounced payment, the bank balance, Grandma's casual admission that she'd given my education money to fund Jake's latest fantasy. By the time I finished, I could hear both parents breathing heavily. $60,000, Dad said. He'd apparently taken the phone. She gave away $60,000 without telling anyone. She said Jake needed it more than I did. That I could figure out loans or scholarships. Dad unleashed a string of curses that would have gotten me grounded for a month at age 16. That woman has been manipulating this family's finances for decades. I should have seen this coming. What do you mean, decades? Another pause. Mom's voice came through, like she'd moved closer to the phone. Sweetheart, there are some things about your grandmother that, well, we probably should have told you earlier. My stomach dropped. What things? Your grandfather's will, Dad said slowly. The original amount he left for your college fund was $120,000, not the $80,000 we told you about. Helen convinced us that the extra $40,000 should go toward family emergencies over the years. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. What kind of emergencies? Jake's legal fees when he got arrested. A loan for your Uncle Kevin's restaurant that never got repaid. She said your Aunt Michelle needed help with her mortgage last year. Mom's voice was getting smaller with each example. Helen always made it sound so reasonable, so temporary. She said she was just being a good family steward. So she's been stealing from me for years. We didn't see it that way at the time, Dad said defensively. She raised you kids when we were going through our rough patch. We trusted her judgment. Their rough patch had lasted 3 years and involved Dad moving out twice. Grandma Helen had indeed stepped in, taking me and my younger siblings Emma and Tyler for extended stays, handling school pickups, making us feel stable when everything else was chaos. I'd been grateful to her. We all had been. Can you help me with the tuition? I asked, though I already knew the answer from their tone. Honey, with the divorce costs and trying to maintain 2 households. Mom trailed off. We're barely keeping our heads above water, Dad finished. I'm sorry. If we had it, we'd give it to you in a heartbeat. After we hung up, I walked to the campus center and bought a coffee I couldn't afford, just to sit somewhere different while I processed this new information. My grandmother hadn't just betrayed me once, she'd been systematically draining my future for years, with my parents' unwitting permission. And now I had less than 48 hours to save my college career, with zero help coming from family. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I started digging through public records online. If Grandma Helen had been managing family finances for years, maybe there were other things my parents didn't know about. What I found made my blood run cold. 3 years ago, when my parents were going through their worst fighting and Dad had moved into that studio apartment across town, they'd almost lost the house. I remembered the hushed conversations, the way Mom would stop talking when us kids walked into the room. Grandma Helen had swooped in like a hero, offering to help with the mortgage payments until Dad could sort out his business. According to the county records, she'd done more than help. She'd paid off the entire remaining balance of $67,000. But the deed transfer showed something my parents had never mentioned. Grandma Helen was now listed as a co-owner of their house. My childhood home. The house where Emma and Tyler still lived. I screenshot everything and called my mom back, my hands shaking as I scrolled through the documents. Mom, did you know Grandma owns half your house? The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. What are you talking about? The deed. She's listed as co-owner. When exactly did that happen? I heard her calling for Dad, then the sound of papers rustling in the background. She said it was just a formality, Mom said finally, her voice small. For tax purposes. To make the mortgage payoff easier to process. Mom, she owns your house. Like, legally owns it. If she wanted to force a sale tomorrow, she could. Dad's voice came through, sharp and panicked. Forward me those documents. Right now. While I waited for him to review everything, I kept digging. Property records led me to business filings, which led me down a rabbit hole that made me feel sick. Helen Morrison was listed as an officer or co-signer on dozens of financial documents spanning the last 15 years. My Uncle Kevin's failed restaurant. She co-signed the business loan, but when it went under, somehow she ended up owning the commercial property. Aunt Michelle's mortgage troubles. Helen had helped by buying the house and letting Michelle rent it back, at above market rates. My grandmother wasn't just managing family finances. She was systematically acquiring control of every family asset she could get her hands on. Dad called back 20 minutes later, and I'd never heard him sound so defeated. Jesus Christ, she owns everything. The restaurant property, Michelle's house, half our place. How did we not see this? Because she made it seem like she was helping, I said, pieces clicking together in my head. She always positioned herself as the solution to everyone's problems. Your Uncle Robert's construction business, Mom added, her voice hollow. When he needed capital 2 years ago, Helen offered to invest. But look at this, she's listed as majority owner. We spent the next hour going through everything I'd found. The picture that emerged was of a woman who'd spent decades positioning herself as the family's financial savior while quietly building an empire of control. Jake's $58,000 wasn't generosity, it was an investment in keeping him dependent. She'd probably structured it as a loan with terms he'd never be able to meet, just like she'd done with everyone else. She's been playing the long game, I said, staring at my laptop screen full of evidence. Making herself indispensable while making sure no one in this family could ever be truly independent. But why? Mom asked. Why would she do this to her own family? Dad's laugh was bitter. Control. It's always been about control with Helen. Remember how she reacted when we told her about the divorce? She didn't ask if we were okay or if we tried counseling. She immediately started talking about the kids, about how we were being selfish, about how she'd have to step in to protect them. I did remember. Grandma Helen's reaction to my parents' divorce had been swift and decisive. Within days, she'd rearranged her schedule to handle school pickups. She'd started keeping extra clothes for us kids at her house. She'd made herself essential to our daily lives while my parents were too overwhelmed to notice how much power they were handing over. She saw an opportunity when you guys were struggling, I realized. Dad's business problems, the marriage falling apart, she used all of it to insert herself deeper into everyone's financial lives. And now she has us all exactly where she wants us, Dad said grimly. But as I sat there surrounded by evidence of my grandmother's decades-long manipulation, something unexpected happened. The panic and desperation I'd been feeling since Wednesday morning began transforming into something else entirely. Clarity. For the first time in my life, I could see Helen Morrison for exactly who she was. And I realized that getting kicked out of college might not be the worst thing that could happen to me. It might be the thing that finally set me free. Friday morning arrived with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. I had until 5 p.m. to pay the $18,500 or my student status would be terminated. I'd spent Thursday night alternating between panicked research into emergency loans and staring at the evidence of Grandma Helen's financial web spread across my desk. At 9 a.m., my phone rang. Jake's name flashed on the screen. Finally, I muttered, answering on the first ring. Jake, we need to talk about. Dude, what the hell? His voice was slurred, like he'd just woken up. Or hadn't slept yet. Grandma Helen is blowing up my phone saying you're causing family drama over money. I thought you were cool. I gripped the phone tighter. Cool. Jake, you took my college fund. $60,000 that was specifically meant for my education. Look, it wasn't like that. Helen said your parents were okay with it, that there was plenty left over. She said you'd understand because we're family. There isn't plenty left over. I'm getting kicked out of school today because of you. A long pause. In the background, I could hear what sounded like morning talk show chatter and someone, a woman, asking who was on the phone. That can't be right, Jake said finally. Helen said it was just part of the money, like a loan kind of thing. She said I could pay it back over time once my contracting business takes off. What contracting business, Jake? What exactly did you do with $58,000? Another pause, longer this time. I bought equipment. A truck. Got my tools upgraded. Paid for the licensing courses. All of it. You spent all $58,000 already. Well, some of it went to getting caught up on other stuff. Back rent, legal fees from that thing last year. And Brianna needed help with her car payments. Brianna. That explained the woman's voice in the background. Jake's on and off girlfriend who'd been arrested twice for check fraud. So let me get this straight, I said, walking to my dorm window to watch normal students heading to normal classes with normal, secure futures. You took my college money, spent it on your girlfriend's car payments and catching up on your own debts, and now you're surprised that I'm upset. It's not like you can't get loans or whatever. College kids do it all the time. This was my one shot to get my life together. The casual entitlement in his voice made me want to throw my phone across the room. Your one shot. Jake, you've had a dozen one shots. The food truck, the energy drink thing, that house flipping scheme. Those were different. This is real. I'm actually making progress. What progress? Give me specifics. Silence stretched between us. Finally, Jake's voice came back, defensive and angry. You know what? I don't have to justify this to you. Helen made the call, not me. If you have a problem with it, take it up with her. I did take it up with her. She said you needed it more than I needed an education. Maybe you do need to learn some real-world lessons instead of hiding in your fancy college bubble. He hung up. I stared at my phone, barely believing what I'd just heard. Not only was Jake completely unapologetic, he actually seemed to think I was being unreasonable for wanting my own money used for its intended purpose. My second call was to the financial aid office, one last desperate attempt to find any emergency option I might have missed. The woman I spoke with was sympathetic but firm. I'm sorry, but emergency funding requires documentation that takes weeks to process. Even if we expedited everything, we couldn't have money available today. What if I could prove the money was stolen? Would that change anything? You'd need to file a police report and provide legal documentation. That process could take months, and there's no guarantee your tuition deadline would be extended while it's pending. After hanging up, I sat in my desk chair and looked around my dorm room. Marcus had already left for his 10 a.m. economics class. His textbooks were stacked neatly on his desk, his schedule printed and pinned to his bulletin board. Everything organized and secure and planned. At 11:30, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Emma. Can you call me? It's about Grandma Helen. Don't tell Mom and Dad. Emma was my 16-year-old sister, currently a junior at Roosevelt High. The fact that she was texting me during school hours from a number I didn't recognize immediately put me on alert. I called her back. Thank God, she answered, her voice hushed. I'm in the bathroom by the gym. Listen, something weird is happening. Grandma Helen picked me and Tyler up from school yesterday and took us to her lawyer's office. My stomach dropped. Her lawyer? Why? She said it was about updating some paperwork, making sure we'd be taken care of if anything happened to Mom and Dad. But the stuff they had us sign. Emma's voice trailed off. What kind of stuff? I don't know exactly. Legal documents. The lawyer kept talking about guardianship arrangements and financial protections. Grandma Helen said it was just in case, because of the divorce stuff, but Tyler was asking questions and she got really snappy with him. I closed my eyes, feeling pieces of an even larger puzzle clicking into place. Emma, did she have you sign anything about money? About your future college funds? Maybe. There was something about educational trusts. She said she was making sure our college money would be protected if Dad's business problems got worse. Protected. Right. Emma, listen to me very carefully. Don't sign anything else for Grandma Helen without talking to Mom and Dad first, okay? No matter what she says about it being urgent or temporary. Why? What's going on? You sound scared. I looked at my laptop screen, still open to property records showing my grandmother's growing collection of family assets. In a few hours, I'd be officially kicked out of college because she'd decided my cousin's latest scheme was more important than my education. And now she was apparently making legal moves involving my younger siblings. I'll explain everything later. But Emma, promise me, no more documents. And if she tries to take you guys anywhere else without telling Mom and Dad, call me immediately. You're freaking me out. Good. Stay freaked out. It'll keep you safe. After we hung up, I realized my hands were shaking. Whatever Grandma Helen was planning, it extended far beyond just liquidating my college fund. She was systematically positioning herself to control my siblings' futures too. At 3 p.m., I walked across campus to the registrar's office to accept the inevitable. The registrar's office felt like a funeral parlor, hushed voices, institutional carpet, and the smell of despair mixed with copy machine toner. I sat in one of those uncomfortable plastic chairs, watching other students handle normal administrative tasks while I waited to officially destroy my academic future. Next, called the woman behind the counter. I approached with my student ID and the withdrawal forms I'd printed from the website. I need to process a financial withdrawal. She looked at my paperwork with the practiced indifference of someone who'd seen this tragedy play out hundreds of times. Tuition payment issue? Something like that. As she typed my information into her computer, my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. Helen wants to meet with all of us tonight. Says she has a solution for your college situation. 7 p.m. at her house. I stared at the message, feeling that familiar chill that came with any solution Helen Morrison proposed. Her track record for solving family problems involved other family members signing over their financial independence. Mr. Chin. The registrar was looking at me expectantly. I need you to initial here, confirming you understand that withdrawal after the semester midpoint may affect your eligibility for future financial aid. I picked up the pen, then set it down again. Can I ask you something? She glanced at the line forming behind me. Quickly. How many students drop out because of family financial emergencies? More than you'd think. Usually it's job loss or medical bills, though. Sometimes divorce situations where assets get frozen. She studied my face. You're not the first kid whose college fund got raided by relatives. Does anyone ever come back? Some do. It usually takes a few years to save up enough, and they have to reapply. But the ones who make it back tend to be more focused. They've learned what they're really working toward. I thought about that as I initialed the form. More focused. That was one way to look at having your safety net ripped away. By 4:30, I was officially no longer a college student. I had until Sunday to clear out my dorm room. I spent the drive home making phone calls from Marcus's car. He'd insisted on driving me, claiming he needed to visit his own family anyway. First, I called my Uncle Robert, the one whose construction business Helen now apparently controlled. Oh, hey kiddo, he answered, sounding surprised. Heard you were having some school troubles. Uncle Rob, I need to ask you about your business partnership with Grandma Helen. The line went quiet for a long moment. What about it? Did you know she's listed as majority owner of your company? That's not right. She's an investor, but I own the business. I started it, I run it, I make all the decisions. When's the last time you looked at the actual incorporation documents? I don't know, maybe 2 years ago when we first set things up. Why? I explained what I'd found in the public records. By the time I finished, Uncle Robert was breathing heavily. Son of a bitch, he muttered. She said the paperwork was just standard investor protection stuff. I was so grateful for the capital injection, I didn't read the fine print. Uncle Rob, I think she's been doing this to everyone in the family for years. Jesus. And now she's got Jake on the payroll too, huh? Payroll? Helen called yesterday, said Jake would be doing some work for me. Clean up jobs, basic labor stuff. Said she'd already worked it out with me, which was news to me, but you know how she gets when you question her decisions. Marcus glanced over at me from the driver's seat, eyebrows raised at my expression. She's setting up Jake to work for your company? I asked. Apparently so. Starting Monday. She said it was all part of helping him get established in the construction trade. After hanging up, I turned to Marcus. She's not just stealing money. She's building some kind of empire where she controls everyone's income, everyone's housing, everyone's future options. That's seriously messed up, dude. My phone rang. Tyler's name appeared on the screen, my 14-year-old brother, who never called anyone if he could text instead. Tyler. What's wrong? Can you come to Grandma's early tonight? His voice sounded small and scared. Before the big family meeting thing. I think Emma and I might have messed up really bad. I pulled into Grandma Helen's driveway at 6:15 p.m., my stomach churning with dread. The house looked exactly the same as always, perfectly manicured lawn, freshly painted shutters, the kind of suburban perfection that screamed responsible adult lives here. Which, I was learning, was the most dangerous kind of lie. Tyler opened the front door before I could knock, his face pale and anxious. At 14, he usually projected that teenage invincibility complex, but today he looked like a scared kid. Where's Emma? I asked, stepping inside. Living room. Grandma's in the kitchen making her special occasion cookies. He made air quotes, rolling his eyes. She's been acting super weird since we got home from school. All smiley and humming, like she won some kind of contest. I found Emma curled up in the corner of Helen's leather sectional, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she looked up at me with the kind of desperation that made my chest tight. "Thank God you're here," she whispered. "I think we signed away our college funds." I sat down beside her, keeping my voice low. "Tell me exactly what happened yesterday." "It wasn't just guardianship stuff," Tyler said, perching on the coffee table across from us. "There were like 6 different documents. The lawyer kept explaining them super fast, and every time we asked questions, Grandma would jump in with, 'It's just standard paperwork, sweethearts.'" Emma pulled a folded paper from her backpack. I managed to keep a copy of one of them. I shoved it in my bag when no one was looking. I unfolded the document and felt my blood turn to ice. It was a trust modification form, transferring management of both Emma and Tyler's education funds to Helen Morrison as primary trustee with full discretionary authority. The language was dense and legal, but the bottom line was crystal clear. She now had complete control over their college money, just like she'd had over mine. The lawyer said it was to protect our funds from Dad's financial instability, Tyler added, making more air quotes. Grandma kept nodding and talking about how irresponsible Dad's been with business decisions. "How much money are we talking about?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. "Grandpa set up $100,000 for each of us," Emma said quietly. "We're not supposed to know the exact amounts, but I overheard Mom and Dad talking about it last year. $200,000. Helen had just maneuvered herself into controlling another $200,000 of family money, and my siblings had unknowingly signed the papers to make it happen. "There's more," Tyler said, glancing toward the kitchen where we could hear Helen humming and the sound of cookie sheets clanking. "She had us sign something about alternative educational pathways too. Said it was in case we decided college wasn't right for us." I stared at him. Alternative educational pathways. Like trade schools, apprenticeships, that kind of thing. She kept talking about how Jake was finally finding his calling in construction work, how maybe college isn't the answer for everyone in the family. Emma's voice was getting smaller with each word. She made it sound like she was just keeping our options open. The pieces clicked together in my head with sickening clarity. Helen wasn't just stealing their college funds, she was setting up legal justification for why they wouldn't need college at all. Alternative pathways. Trade work. Probably working for Uncle Robert's construction company that she now controlled. She was systematically creating a family workforce, with herself as the sole employer and decision-maker. "Did she say anything else about your futures? About what you might want to do after high school?" Tyler and Emma exchanged a look that told me everything I needed to know. "She said the family business is expanding," Tyler said slowly. "That there would be opportunities for all of us to work together, to stay close instead of scattered around the country at different colleges." "She made it sound nice," Emma added, tears starting to fall. "Like we'd all be this tight-knit family unit, helping each other succeed." The sound of Helen's humming grew louder as she approached the living room, carrying a plate of chocolate chip cookies that smelled like childhood comfort and tasted like manipulation. "Oh wonderful, you're here early," she announced brightly, setting the cookies on the coffee table. "I'm so glad we'll have time to chat before your parents arrive. We have so much to celebrate tonight." Helen settled into her favorite armchair, the one position to overlook the entire room like a queen surveying her court. She was wearing her special occasions outfit, the navy blue dress with pearl buttons that she always chose when she wanted to project authority wrapped in grandmotherly warmth. "Now then," she said, reaching for a cookie with those perfectly manicured nails, "I suppose you children have been worrying unnecessarily about all this college business." Emma's hand found mine on the couch cushion between us, her fingers cold and trembling. "Grandma," I said carefully, "we need to talk about what happened to my college fund." "Oh, sweetheart, that's exactly why I wanted us all together tonight." Her smile was radiant, like she was about to announce someone's engagement. "I've been working on a solution that's going to benefit everyone in this family." Tyler shifted on the coffee table, accidentally knocking his knee against the cookie plate. "What kind of solution?" "Well, Tyler, you know how Uncle Robert's construction business has been growing so rapidly. And Jake is finally getting his life on track with real, meaningful work." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "I've been thinking about how we can create opportunities for all of you right here at home." My stomach clenched. "What do you mean?" "Emma, dear, you've always been so artistic. Interior design is a booming field, and it pairs perfectly with construction and renovation work. You could start learning the business from the ground up, working alongside your cousins and uncles." Emma's grip on my hand tightened. "But I want to study journalism. I want to write for newspapers." Helen waved dismissively. "Newspapers are dying, sweetheart. But people will always need beautiful homes. And Tyler," she turned to my brother with that calculating gleam in her eyes. "You're so good with your hands, so mechanically inclined. Jake could teach you everything about the trades. You'd be earning real money instead of accumulating debt at some expensive university." "I want to study engineering," Tyler said, his voice cracking slightly. "I want to design bridges." "Bridge design is just problem solving with materials and physics," Helen said smoothly. "You can learn those same skills in construction, and you'll understand how things actually get built instead of just drawing pictures on paper." I watched her systematically dismantling my siblings' dreams with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Every aspiration redirected toward her growing business empire, every future channeled through enterprises she controlled. "And as for you," she said, turning to me with triumph glittering in her eyes, "this college situation might be the best thing that ever happened to you. Getting kicked out of school is the best thing that ever happened to me. You're finally free to pursue something practical. Robert needs someone smart to handle the administrative side of the business, contracts, scheduling, client relations. You could start immediately, learn the industry from the inside out." The audacity took my breath away. She'd orchestrated the destruction of my education, and now she was presenting the cleanup as a gift. "You've thought this all through, haven't you?" I said slowly. "I've spent months planning how to bring this family back together. Everyone's scattered to different colleges, different cities, different lives. That's not how families should work." Her voice took on that steel-wrapped in silk tone I'd learned to fear. "We're stronger together. We take care of each other. By eliminating everyone's choices. By creating better choices. Choices that keep us connected." She stood up, smoothing her dress with satisfaction. Your parents will understand once I explain everything tonight. Once they see the opportunities I've arranged. Outside, I heard the sound of car doors slamming. Mom and Dad were arriving, completely unaware that they were walking into the presentation of Helen's master plan for the family's future, a future where she controlled every paycheck, every opportunity, and every escape route. Emma's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and went white. What? I whispered. She showed me the screen. A message from Jake: welcome to the family business, little cousins. Grandma H says you're both starting work next week. Hope you're ready to get your hands dirty. The front door opened, and I heard my parents' voices mixing with the sound of their footsteps on Helen's hardwood floors. Emma quickly shoved her phone back into her pocket, but not before I saw her hands shaking. Should we warn them? Tyler whispered, glancing toward the hallway. Before I could answer, Helen swept back into the living room like she was hosting a dinner party instead of unveiling years of financial manipulation. David. Sarah. Perfect timing. I've just been explaining the wonderful opportunities I've arranged for the children. Dad appeared first, his face already showing the strain of another day dealing with divorce attorneys. Mom followed, clutching her purse like armor. They both looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep tired that comes from fighting battles on multiple fronts. Helen, Dad said carefully, we need to discuss what happened with the college fund before we talk about anything else. Oh, that's all sorted out, Helen replied with a dismissive wave. Sit down, both of you. I'll explain everything. But I was done with her explanations. Done with watching her manipulate information to sound like generosity while she systematically destroyed our futures. Actually, I'll explain, I said, standing up. Mom, Dad, did you know that Grandma Helen now legally controls Emma and Tyler's college funds too? The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's purse slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a dull thud. What are you talking about? Dad's voice was dangerously quiet. I pulled out the document Emma had saved, unfolding it so they could see Helen's signature alongside my siblings' forged teenage handwriting. Yesterday, she took Emma and Tyler to her lawyer and had them sign trust modifications. She now has full discretionary authority over $200,000 of their education money. Mom reached for the paper with trembling hands. Helen, please tell me this isn't what it looks like. It's exactly what it needs to be, Helen said, her mask finally starting to slip. You two are in no position to make financial decisions right now. Your divorce is bankrupting both of you, David's business is failing, and these children need stability. Stability? Dad's voice rose. You call stealing their college fund stability? I call it insurance against your poor choices, Helen snapped back. Just like Jake needed insurance against living on the streets while your precious eldest child sits in a comfortable dorm room. Emma made a small choking sound beside me. Tyler's face had gone completely pale. Mom, Tyler said quietly, she's already told Jake we're starting work next week. Before we even knew about it. Dad turned to Helen with an expression I'd never seen before, something beyond anger, approaching hatred. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? The college fund raid, the legal documents, the job arrangements. This wasn't about helping Jake. This was about trapping all of them. It's about keeping this family together. Helen's composure cracked completely. You think I'm going to stand by and watch these children scatter across the country, accumulating debt, forgetting where they came from? You think I'll let them make the same selfish mistakes you and Sarah made? The same mistakes. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. What mistakes? Putting yourselves first. Putting your individual desires ahead of family obligations. Look where it got you, divorced, broke, unable to take care of your own children's education. The cruelty in her voice was breathtaking. She was using my parents' lowest moment, their most vulnerable financial situation, as justification for stealing their children's futures. You created this situation, I said, the realization hitting me like lightning. Dad's business problems, the house payments that put you on the deed, all the family emergencies that drained everyone's resources, you orchestrated all of it. Helen's smile returned, cold and satisfied. I provided solutions when your family needed them most. And now I'm providing the next solution. By making us all your employees, Emma said, finding her voice for the first time since our parents arrived. By making sure we can never leave. By making sure you never want to leave, Helen corrected. Family businesses are the foundation of generational wealth. You'll thank me when you're 30 and debt-free instead of drowning in student loans. That's when I knew she'd revealed too much. The mask was completely off now, and even my parents could see exactly who Helen Morrison really was. Dad's face went through about 6 different emotions in a span of 10 seconds, finally settling on something that looked like rage mixed with disbelief. Helen, are you listening to yourself right now? You're talking about our children like they're assets you can allocate. I'm talking about them like they're family members who deserve better than the chaos you've created, Helen shot back. Emma and Tyler don't need to struggle through 4 years of college debt when they can start building real equity immediately. What if we don't want to build equity in construction? Tyler's voice cracked, but he pushed forward. What if I actually want to design bridges? What if Emma actually wants to be a journalist? Helen's expression softened into that patronizing smile I'd learned to hate. Sweetheart, those are childhood dreams. I'm offering you real opportunities in a growing family enterprise. By stealing our college money, Emma said, her voice getting stronger. Money that Grandpa specifically left for our education. Your grandfather left that money for your future security, Helen corrected. College doesn't guarantee security anymore. But family businesses do. Mom had been silent through this exchange, studying the trust documents with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle. When she finally looked up, her face was pale but determined. Helen, these signatures. Emma's signature here doesn't match her usual handwriting. My sister went rigid beside me. The lawyer was rushing us through everything. He kept moving the papers around, pointing where we should sign. I could barely see what I was writing. Because he guided your hand, I said, the pieces clicking together. Jesus Christ, Grandma, did you have them forge their own signatures? The children signed willingly, Helen said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. They understand the benefits of family unity. They're minors, Dad said, his voice dangerously quiet. Even if they had signed willingly, they can't legally modify trust documents without parental consent. Helen's silence stretched too long. Finally, she lifted her chin with that familiar defiant gesture. I have power of attorney for educational decisions. Granted during your separation when you were both too distracted to handle school matters properly. Educational decisions, Mom repeated slowly. Not financial trust modifications. The lawyer assured me the documents were within my authority as educational guardian. I watched my parents exchange a look that contained an entire conversation. Dad pulled out his phone and started scrolling through his contacts. What are you doing? Helen asked, her voice sharp with the first hint of real concern I'd heard. Calling my attorney. And then I'm calling the police. The police? Helen's mask slipped entirely, revealing something desperate underneath. David, there's no need for such dramatics. We can work this out as a family. You've been systematically defrauding this family for years, Dad said, his finger hovering over his phone screen. The house deed, Robert's business, Michelle's mortgage, the kids' college funds. How much money are we talking about total, Helen? I've been protecting this family's assets during a period of instability. How much money? Dad's voice cut through her explanation like a blade. Helen stood up abruptly, smoothing her dress with hands that were no longer quite steady. I think this conversation has gotten out of hand. Perhaps we should all take some time to cool down before we say things we'll regret. The only thing I regret, I said, standing up to face her, is not seeing through your bullshit sooner. For the first time since I've known her, my grandmother looked genuinely rattled. Watch your language, young lady. I raised you better than that. No, you raised me to be grateful for your manipulation. There's a difference. Emma's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it and her face went white. Jake's outside. He says Grandma Helen told him to come help handle the family meeting. Through the front window, I could see Jake's beat-up Honda in the driveway, engine still running. The sound of Jake's car door slamming echoed through Helen's perfectly manicured neighborhood like a gunshot. Through the bay window, I watched my cousin swagger up the walkway with that particular brand of false confidence he perfected over the years, chest puffed out, shoulders back, like he was walking into a business meeting instead of a family intervention. Helen, Dad said, his voice deadly calm, did you seriously call Jake here as backup? I called him because he's part of this family's future, she replied, but I caught the slight tremor in her hands as she smoothed her dress for the third time. He deserves to understand the opportunities we're creating. The front door opened without a knock, because of course Jake would just walk into someone else's house like he owned it. He appeared in the living room doorway wearing a construction company t-shirt that was probably 3 sizes too big and work boots that looked suspiciously new. Hey everybody, he said, scanning the room with the situational awareness of a goldfish. Grandma Helen said you needed some help explaining the business stuff to everyone. Tyler let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Business stuff? Is that what we're calling stealing our college funds? Jake's expression shifted into defensive mode, his jaw tightening in that way that usually preceded him saying something spectacularly stupid. Look, kid, nobody stole anything. Helen made an investment in family stability. There's a difference. An investment? Emma's voice rose an octave. You spent our education money on your girlfriend's car payments. That's not, Jake started, then stopped, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to remember his lines. He glanced at Helen, who was watching him with the intensity of a chess player realizing her favorite piece was about to be captured. Jake, I said, pulling out my phone, want to hear the recording I made of our conversation yesterday? The one where you admit to spending college fund money on back rent and legal fees? His face went pale. You recorded me. That's, like, illegal or something. Actually, it's completely legal in this state, Dad said, his finger still hovering over his attorney's contact. Single-party consent. And it's about to become evidence. Helen stepped forward, her voice taking on that commanding tone she used when she needed to regain control of a situation. Everyone needs to calm down. Jake, tell them about the progress you've made with Robert's crew. Tell them about the real opportunities waiting for Emma and Tyler. But Jake was staring at my phone like it was a snake. Grandma Helen, you said this was all worked out. You said their parents were cool with the arrangement. I said their parents would understand once they saw the benefits, Helen replied sharply. Which they will, if everyone would stop being so emotional and think practically. Practically. Mom's voice cut through the room like broken glass. Helen, you forged legal documents using our minor children. That's not practical, it's criminal. Jake's head whipped back and forth between Helen and my parents, confusion and panic warring across his face. Wait, what? Nobody said anything about forged documents. You told me the lawyer handled everything legitimately. The lawyer handled everything according to my instructions, Helen said, but her voice had lost that authoritative edge. For the first time, she sounded like what she was, a 73-year-old woman whose carefully constructed house of cards was collapsing. Your instructions to commit fraud, I said, amazed at how calm my own voice sounded. Using power of attorney for educational decisions to modify financial trusts. Having Emma and Tyler sign documents they couldn't legally consent to, with signatures that don't match their normal handwriting. Jake took a step backward toward the doorway. Look, I don't know anything about legal stuff. I just needed help getting back on my feet, and Helen offered. If there's some kind of paperwork problem, that's between you guys. Oh no, Emma said, standing up from the couch with a fury I'd never seen from my normally quiet sister. You don't get to walk away from this. You took our future and spent it on your loser lifestyle, and now you want to pretend you're innocent. I didn't know it was your college money specifically, Jake protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Helen said it was family emergency funds. For 8 months. Tyler stood up beside Emma, and suddenly my teenage siblings looked older, angrier, more determined than I'd ever seen them. You've been spending our money for 8 months and you never once wondered where it came from. Jake's phone started ringing. He glanced at the screen and his face went even paler. It's Brianna. She's probably wondering where I am. Answer it, I said suddenly. An idea was forming in my head, dangerous but necessary. Put it on speaker. What? No, I'm not. Jake, Helen said sharply, don't answer that phone. But Jake was already swiping to accept the call, his movements automatic and panicked. Brianna's voice filled the room, tinny through the phone speaker. Baby, where are you? The dealership called about the Mercedes payment being late again. I thought you said your grandmother was handling all our bills now. The silence in Helen's living room was deafening. The Mercedes payment. Through the phone speaker, Brianna's voice continued, oblivious to the fact that she was providing evidence to a room full of witnesses. I mean, I know the CLK 350 was expensive, but you said 50 grand was nothing compared to what your family gave you for the business. And the apartment deposit went through fine, so I figured. Jake frantically hit the end call button, but it was too late. The damage was done. 50,000 for a Mercedes. Dad's voice was barely controlled. Jake, you bought your girlfriend a $50,000 car with my kid's college money? It's not like that, Jake stammered, backing toward the doorway. It's a lease, and Brianna needs reliable transportation for her new job. What job? I interrupted. Last I heard, she was unemployed. She's going to be working for the family business too. Helen said we could all. Stop talking, Helen hissed, but Jake was spiraling now, words tumbling out in his panic. And the apartment isn't even that expensive. Only $2,800 a month, and it's in a really good area. Helen said investing in our living situation was part of building a stable foundation for $2,800 a month. Mom's voice had gone deadly quiet. You're spending almost $3,000 monthly on rent, plus payments on a Mercedes, plus whatever other expenses, and you think you're going to pay back $60,000 working construction. Tyler pulled out his phone and started calculating. That's over $33,000 a year just for rent. Plus car payments, insurance, food, utilities. He looked up at Jake with disgust. You'd need to make like $60,000 a year just to break even, and that's before paying back anything you stole from us. It's not stolen. Jake shouted, finally snapping. Helen gave it to me. She said the family needed to start thinking bigger, investing in the future instead of throwing money away on college degrees that don't mean anything anymore. College degrees don't mean anything. Emma's voice was shaking with rage. You know what doesn't mean anything? Your girlfriend's luxury car payments. My journalism degree could actually help people create something meaningful. But instead, that money is going to depreciate by 50% the minute Brianna drives off the lot. Helen had been silent during this exchange, but I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how to regain control of the narrative. When she finally spoke, her voice had that steel-wrapped in silk quality that meant she was about to go nuclear. That's enough, she said, moving to stand beside Jake like she was protecting him. This family has always been about supporting each other through difficult times. Yes, I made decisions about resource allocation without consulting everyone, but I made those decisions based on immediate need and long-term stability. Resource allocation. Dad laughed bitterly. Helen, you're talking about our children's futures like line items in a budget. I'm talking about them like family members who deserve better than watching their parents destroy themselves with debt and divorce while they accumulate their own debt in colleges that will teach them nothing about building real wealth. Real wealth? I stood up, amazement and fury battling in my chest. Grandma, what real wealth? Jake just admitted to spending almost $40,000 a year on luxury lifestyle expenses. That's not building wealth, that's burning money. It's investing in presentation and stability. It's funding a fantasy, Tyler interrupted, his voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. And you stole our futures to pay for his girlfriend's car. Jake's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it reflexively, and his face went ashen. What now? I asked. Brianna wants to know if we can afford the down payment on the beach house rental for her birthday weekend. She found one for $4,500 for 3 days. The room exploded. The beach house text was the final straw that broke whatever remained of my family's patience. Dad's face went through about 12 different shades of red before settling on a color I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist in nature. $4,500 for a birthday weekend, he said, his voice so quiet it was terrifying. While my son got kicked out of college for $18,500. Jake was frantically texting back, probably trying to do damage control with Brianna, but Mom snatched the phone right out of his hands. Hey, he protested, reaching for it, but Tyler stepped between them. Give me that, Mom said, scrolling through the messages. Her face got paler with each swipe. Helen, did you know Jake promised Brianna a $10,000 engagement ring for Christmas? Because according to these texts, he's been telling her that family money will cover it. Emma made a sound like she'd been punched. $10,000. That's more than half my first semester tuition. It's an investment in their future, Helen said, but her voice was getting weaker with each defense. Young couples need to feel secure in their commitment. Secure. I couldn't help myself from laughing, but it came out harsh and bitter. Jake's been unemployed for 3 years, he's got a criminal record, and he's never held a job longer than 8 months. But sure, let's invest in his relationship security with my siblings' college funds. Jake finally found his voice again, though it came out high and defensive. I haven't been completely unemployed. I've been doing gig work, DoorDash, some landscaping. Making what, maybe $12,000 a year. Tyler was still holding Jake's phone, scrolling through more messages. Because according to your Venmo history, you've been spending more on takeout than most people make in a month. Tyler, stop going through his phone, Mom said, but she didn't sound like she really meant it. Mom, look at this, Tyler continued, his voice getting higher with each discovery. $300 at a steakhouse last week. $400 at some club on Friday. Jake, you spent more money partying last weekend than Emma makes working at the library all semester. Helen stepped forward, her composure finally cracking completely. Give me that phone. You children have no right to invade Jake's privacy. Privacy. Emma's voice rose to match Tyler's. He invaded our privacy when he spent our education money on bottle service. Dad's attorney apparently answered his call, because I heard him explaining the situation in clipped, professional sentences. Financial fraud involving minors, forged trust documents, approximately $260,000 total. The numbers made my head spin. It wasn't just the college funds anymore. As Dad talked to his lawyer, the scope of Helen's manipulation became clear. The house deed, Uncle Robert's business, Aunt Michelle's mortgage, the kids' trusts, we were looking at over $500,000 in family assets that Helen had systematically moved under her control. Jake's phone buzzed with another text in Tyler's hands. This one made my brother's face go completely white. What is it? I asked. Tyler showed me the screen. A message from someone named Marcus, not my roommate Marcus, apparently, asking Jake if he was still good for the $25K investment in a crypto mining operation. Jake, I said slowly, please tell me you didn't invest our college money in cryptocurrency. The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. It's not what you think, he started, but Helen cut him off with a sharp gesture. Jake, don't say another word. We're calling my lawyer. Your lawyer. Dad finished his call and turned back to us, his expression grim. Helen, my attorney says the documents you had the kids sign aren't just fraudulent, they're evidence of elder financial abuse and exploitation of minors. You could be looking at felony charges. Don't be ridiculous, Helen snapped, but I caught the tremor in her voice. I'm protecting this family's interests. By funding crypto scams? Emma grabbed the phone from Tyler, reading Jake's message thread. Jake promised this Marcus person $25,000 for some Bitcoin mining scheme. Last week. The room went dead silent except for the sound of Helen's grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, the same clock that had marked time through all our family gatherings, all the holidays where she'd seemed like the stable center holding us together. Now it just sounded like a countdown to disaster. Jake's face had gone from pale to green, like he was about to throw up all over Helen's pristine Persian rug. The crypto thing isn't a scam, he said weakly. Marcus showed me all the projections. We could triple the investment in 6 months. Marcus who? Dad demanded. What's his last name? Where did you meet him? He's a friend of Brianna's ex-roommate. He runs this whole operation out of his garage, really professional setup. His garage, Tyler repeated flatly. You invested our college money with some guy who runs a cryptocurrency operation out of his garage. Helen stepped forward, her voice sharp with panic barely contained beneath her usual authoritative tone. Jake, I specifically told you that money was for legitimate business expenses only. You said to invest in our future. Jake shot back, finally showing some backbone. You said traditional thinking was what kept our family poor while other people got rich. Marcus explained how Bitcoin mining is the future of wealth building. Bitcoin mining requires massive computational power and electricity costs, Tyler interrupted, his voice incredulous. Even legitimate operations barely break even anymore. Some guy in his garage. Jake, you got scammed. Mom was still scrolling through Jake's phone, her face getting paler by the second. There are 17 different Venmo payments to someone called Marcus Crypto King. 17. The most recent one was yesterday for $3,500. Yesterday. I felt like the floor was tilting beneath me. Jake, where did you get $3,500 yesterday? The college fund was already empty. The silence stretched so long I could hear Mrs. Patterson's dog barking 3 houses down. Jake, Helen said, her voice deadly quiet, what did you do? Brianna's car payment was due, and Marcus said the mining operation needed one more equipment upgrade to reach full capacity. He showed me the numbers, Helen. We're talking about $50,000 in returns by Christmas. Where did you get the money? Dad's voice cut through Jake's rambling like a blade. Jake looked around the room like he was searching for an escape route. Finally, his shoulders sagged in defeat. I took out a payday loan using the construction job as collateral. Marcus said it was just temporary, until the first mining payouts come through. A payday loan, Mom repeated, her voice hollow. Jake, do you have any idea what the interest rates are on those? It's fine. Robert's paying me $1,500 a week, and Marcus guaranteed the first payout by next Friday. $1,500 a week. Uncle Robert's voice came from the hallway, making everyone jump. Apparently he'd arrived while we were all focused on the Jake disaster. Son, I'm paying you $15 an hour for cleanup work. 3 days a week. That's maybe $4.50 on a good week. Jake's face went from green to gray. But Helen said the family business was expanding, that there'd be supervisor positions, profit sharing. Jake, Robert said, stepping into the living room and taking in the scene, I've got 2 employees and a pickup truck. There's no profit to share. Helen was gripping the back of her armchair so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Robert, we discussed the expansion plans. The new contracts, the additional crews. Helen, we discussed you giving me enough capital to maybe hire one more part-time guy. There are no new contracts. Robert looked around at all of us, confusion clear on his face. What exactly have you been telling people? Emma held up Jake's phone, showing another message thread. According to this, Jake told his crypto friend that he works for a major regional construction company with guaranteed income growth and family investment backing. Jesus Christ, Robert muttered. Jake, my business is me and 2 other guys doing kitchen renovations and bathroom remodels. On a really good month, we might clear $8,000 in profit. Total. The mathematical impossibility of Jake's situation was becoming crystal clear. He owed money to payday lenders, had promised investments to crypto scammers, was making payments on a $50,000 car and a luxury apartment, and his actual income was maybe $200 a week doing cleanup work. How much do you owe the payday loan place? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. It's not that bad, Jake said quickly. Only $4,500. But with the weekly interest and fees, it'll be like $6,000 by next month if I don't pay it back. Dad pulled out his phone again, presumably to call his attorney back. Helen, please tell me you didn't co-sign for Jake's payday loan. The look on her face was answer enough. The payday loan revelation broke something fundamental in the room's atmosphere. Dad's face cycled through disbelief, rage, and finally settled on a kind of cold clarity I'd never seen before. Helen, he said, his voice eerily calm, you co-signed a payday loan for Jake using what collateral? The construction business assets, she whispered, and Uncle Robert made a sound like he'd been kicked in the stomach. My business assets, Robert said, his voice rising. Helen, you put my equipment up as collateral for Jake's gambling debts. They're not gambling debts. Jake protested weakly, but no one was listening to him anymore. I looked around the room, at my siblings clutching each other on the couch, at my parents staring at the woman who'd raised me with expressions of complete betrayal, at Uncle Robert realizing his business was about to be seized by predatory lenders, at Jake spiraling through the consequences of 8 months of financial fantasy. And something unexpected happened. I started laughing. Not the bitter, angry laughter from earlier. Real, genuine, liberating laughter that bubbled up from somewhere deep in my chest. What the hell is wrong with you? Jake snapped, probably grateful for a target that wasn't demanding explanations about crypto scams. I just realized something, I said, wiping tears from my eyes. Grandma Helen, you didn't just destroy my college fund. You freed me. Helen's face went white. What are you talking about? For 19 years, I've been trying to live up to your expectations. Study business, get practical skills, be responsible, be grateful for your guidance. I stood up, feeling lighter than I had in months. But you know what? Getting kicked out of school was the best thing that ever happened to me. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app I downloaded 3 days ago. While you were all planning my future in the family construction business, I spent the last 3 days building something of my own. The room went quiet as I showed them the screen. Remember that coding boot camp I wanted to do sophomore year? The one you said was impractical, Grandma? I found a 3-week intensive program in Seattle. Starts Monday. How are you paying for that? Mom asked. Funny story. Turns out when you're no longer worried about maintaining a college GPA or following someone else's plan for your life, you can take risks. I scrolled to another app. I sold my textbooks, my meal plan, everything I owned, and put it all into building a simple app that helps people track and dispute fraudulent transactions on their accounts. Dad leaned forward. What kind of app? The kind that automatically flags suspicious activities like unauthorized trust modifications, unusual large withdrawals, or co-signed loans on assets you didn't agree to. I looked directly at Helen. I've been beta testing it on our family's financial records for the last 2 days. Helen's face had gone completely ashen. You can't just. I already did. Tyler, Emma, check your emails. My siblings grabbed their phones. Tyler's face lit up first. Holy shit. Sarah, look at this. Emma's gasp was audible. The app found everything. Every transaction, every document, every fraudulent signature. It's all here, with legal precedents and filing procedures. It also automatically reports suspected elder abuse and minor exploitation to the appropriate authorities, I added casually. Should save Dad some time with his attorney. The silence was deafening. Then Tyler started laughing too, followed by Emma, and finally even my parents were smiling despite everything. So while you were planning my future as your employee, I said to Helen, I was building my own company. The coding boot camp is just the beginning. I've already got 3 investors interested based on the beta results. Jake was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You're just going to walk away from everything? I'm walking toward everything, I corrected. College would have taught me to follow other people's business plans. This taught me to create my own. I looked around the room one last time, at my siblings who were finally seeing Helen clearly, at my parents who were free from her manipulation, at the woman who controlled our family for decades and was finally facing the consequences. Thanks for the life lesson, Grandma. Turns out the best way to learn about family business is to get screwed by one.